Now, a critical food plot strategy that is really important for your land, but I often see missed across the country, is making sure that you plant the exact same mixture of seed varieties on every single food plot. Meaning, you don't want a brassica plot over here, corn over here, beans over here, clover over here, because each one of those food varieties peaks in nutrition and attraction and holding ability at different times throughout the season. Now, you may think that's a good thing, that you're diversifying, you're offering lots of different choices around your property and the deer move from choice to choice, but that's not true. In fact, those deer really want to have a stable food source that they go to every single afternoon, every week of the season, all season long. So if you have different food sources, what happens is you have the dominant doe family groups. They're the ones that are going to rule the roost and bed next to those food sources, but you have those dominant doe family groups that take up residence during the food plot of the week or the food plot of the month. And then when this food plot over here is peaking in nutrition attraction, then those does move, they go over here. And then what happens with those does that were over there, and then those doe family groups that are over there, were they even relating to this food source? Were they relating to this one that's not peaking yet? What happens is when you plant the same food source diversity and variety on all your plots, is that you can expect, and what I've experienced over and over and over again, I can't tell you how many times I've literally worked with hundreds of people, over 700 people, developing their food plot programs for them across 25 states. I've had my own food sources, food plots in multiple states. And I've seen this over and over again. You'll have the same doe family groups, and you guys have probably seen this too. You have the same doe family groups relating to the same food source all season long as that food source stays the same in nutrition and attraction and holding ability. You can spread out your doe family groups then. You can lower the stress level on your property. So if you don't have these doe family groups interacting with these doe family groups and these doe family groups over here on different plots, then you develop very stable, very low stress movements that individual bucks can relate to. Instead of your property being one big mess where doe family groups are interacting with each other and moving from food source to food source throughout the season and creating a high stress, almost fighting environment, hostile environment in some places where does are competing for that food, then you can lower the stress level and those individual bucks can relate to those individual movements. Everything's low stress. And what I've seen is you can fit a lot more deer on your property. You can lower the stress levels. The movements are more dependable. So when you're accessing your land to hunt, you're trying to get in and out of your stands without spooking deer, it's a lot easier because you're not bumping into these does that are randomly moving all over the place and getting pushed. And then for that, I have experienced you can fit a lot more bucks on your property because they'll relate to each of these individual low stress movements. A lot of people don't do this. And so there's not a lot of guys that experience this out there. And I'm telling you that this is something I've experienced over and over. It's easy to set up. You have to make sure that you have the same diversity in every plot. So for example, that's why I love putting brassicas on one side of the plot. I'll put cereal grains, winter peas, forage peas, late planted beans on the other, top dress it with rye. I'm trying to offer food sources within the same plot, even multiple plantings within the same plot, so that there's enough diversity, because let's face it, each forage is going to peak in nutrition and attraction for 6-7 weeks out of the season. It's not going to you're not going to have something that attracts deer for all 13, 14, 15 weeks of the season. So by having these different mixtures in each plot, you're trying to offer enough to last the entire season. And greens can do that. Greens can do that for you, any kind of blend of greens. Then if you have enough space, I like to add corn, and you might 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 each plot. And then finally some early planted beans might be an important part of your planting program too. Remaining and keeping that diversity on every single plot has so many different advantages for you throughout the entire season. Spreading out your does. For one thing too, you can't have unsupported acres of cover that aren't supported by food. So let's say you have 80 acres. Well, the one end of your property is 700 yards away from the nearest food source on your property. It's probably too far outside that daily movement that bucks want to actually relate to the point where it's so far away from that food source that they might relate to your neighbor's food source, or they might relate to your food source partially, the neighbor's partially. You have to look at different food sources offering that same diversity level for all deer on the property. and you still represent a large core sanctuary on your property where you have that big area of cover. But in an ag area, you're not moving those mature bucks, and from where their bedding could potentially be in relating to a food source, more than 200 to 400 yards. And so you always have food representing and relating to each portion of your property. Different diversity within the plot and the same planting on every plot. You spread out your does, you spread out your buck movements. All your tree stands are working for you. Your whole property is productive for you the entire hunting season. You can actually hunt different stands that relate to different movements. You don't have area properties that are void because there's no food source there relating to it. Most of all, you're lowering your stress. You're allowing for different movements. You're keeping things calm on your property. That means all your bedding areas are working for you that relate to those food sources. Offer the same planting in every plot. Don't plant clover here, beans here, corn here. It's a very bad practice. It's not making your property very efficient. Your tree stands very efficient. Your bedding area is very efficient. Your movements, your water holes, everything that relates to the structure and movement on your property has to relate to the same food source in all your food plots on your land. I urge you to try it. I've seen it happen hundreds of times. It works this way. It's a very good way to design your parcel. The same plantings all across the board. You'll love it. Most of all, the deer love it. They love it when it's calm, low stress. That invites those mature bucks to come in and slot into those individual movements. And boy, your hunting, your herd control, your ability to create a great herd and a great hunt goes through the roof when you plant different forages within the same plot, same diversity on every plot within your acres of your little whitetail slice of heaven.